Welcome everyone to our pop-up conference co-sponsored by the Michigan Academic Library Association and Michigan Health Sciences Libraries Association. We are super excited that you joined us today, and we have a really nice agenda planned focused on adult learners tailoring library services. So before we get started, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about how this conference came to be and the group that's actually planning it. So my name is Stephanie Swanberg. I am a medical librarian at the Oakland University William Beaumont School of Medicine, and also the leader of the group that is planning this conference, which is the MIALA Partnership Task Force, along with my other members here. So Jennifer Bowen, Diane Gardner, Heather Ladisky, Helen Look, Barbara Platts, Rebecca Ranieri, and Jessica Sender. So over the last year and a half, our group has actually been working together to find new ways for our two professional memberships to benefit from one another. So back in February 2019, we were actually formed with the intent of exploring ways that MHSLA and MIALA could partner together and recommend to our two boards what we could do. So thus far, we've been doing a lot of awareness raising. So we've instituted reciprocal membership pricing at each other's conferences. We've been presenting at each other's conferences, either information tables or presentations, so we can start to get to know one another as who is MHSLA, who are our members, who is MIALA, who are our members, and also finding ways and opportunities for our groups to learn from one another. So we've been sharing out webinar opportunities hosted by the different groups and have had a few shared opportunities between our two groups. And then this is kind of the biggest thing we've done so far, which is this pop-up conference, which we are hosting today. And our intent moving forward is that we will actually be hosting a joint annual conference starting in 2022 between MHSLA and MIALA. So that's kind of where we've come from and where we're going. And I just want to thank all of the members of the Partnership Task Force. This was truly a group effort to plan this conference and move it from our original in-person meeting in Lansing to an entirely virtual environment. So we'll see how this goes today. I think it'll go very, very well. So our agenda, we are going to start our primary event, our CE workshop at 10:10 today, Adapting Teaching Strategies for the New iGeneration. And then we are going to have a brief lunch break for an hour so everybody can take a mental break, get away from the computer for a while, and then come back at 1 o'clock for two back-to-back panels talking about teaching learners at different education levels and methods of support for adult learning from the library perspective. And we also wanted to make this a little fun, so we're going to break up the day with two book raffles. One we'll have right at the noon hour, right after our workshop is done, where we'll raffle off 3 cookbooks, and then we'll have another at the very end during our wrap-up session where we will raffle off another 2 books. So as a registrant or a panelist or a presenter or a planning member, you are automatically entered into the raffle, and Heather will be coordinating that during those times. So good luck, you might win a cookbook today. So I'm going to hand it just briefly over to Heather to talk about kind of our Zoom logistics and our expectations for how we're going to interact with each other today. So Heather.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. We're very excited about having you guys here. Just want to give you a few Zoom housekeeping rules. Just want to let you know as you log in and we let you into out of the waiting room into the meeting, you should be muted, but make sure that your microphone is muted, as well as your camera. Make sure you turn your camera off. And we'd like you to stay muted until you're going to ask a question or you participate in a conversation. I want you to take this moment to hover over down towards the bottom of your screen. you should see a menu that provides you with the option to open your chat and your participant panels. It'd be great to do that right now. That way you can see the group chat, and you can also interact with the speakers using the reaction icons at the bottom of the participants panel. You should see something that says yes, no, go slower, go faster. You should be able to see some options to interact with the speakers. And then be sure you, when you ask a question in the group chat, go ahead and ask it at any time. Make sure it says to everybody in the little drop-down menu. We will be monitoring this group chat and periodically letting the presenters know that there's a question. So feel free to add it anytime. If you have any AV issues, feel free to email me at heather@miala.org, and I will try to work with you. Or you can send a chat just to me in the group chat. I'll try to keep an eye on that. And then, let's see. I think that's it. If you have any questions, just let us know. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Heather. So again, Heather will put her email in the chat box. If you have any technology issues as the day goes on, we can definitely help you with that and try to troubleshoot. Okay, with that, I am very pleased to introduce our first session of the day, and very, very excited to welcome our two presenters, as they are two of my very close colleagues at the OUWB School of Medicine. So the title of today's workshop is Adapting Teaching Strategies for the New iGeneration, Translating Generational Research for the Newest Generation. And our two presenters are Dr. Rebecca Pratt and Dr. Tracey Taylor. So let me give you just a little bit of background about them. So Dr. Pratt is a professor of anatomical sciences and has been a medical educator for 17 years. She's also taught undergraduate pre-med students as well as students in physical therapy and physician assistant professional programs. Dr. Tracey Taylor is an associate professor of microbiology and has been a medical educator for 15 years. She has also taught undergraduate science students and enjoys teaching science to elementary school children on a volunteer basis. So really the origins of this workshop developed out of an interest in generational education that came from reading a book as part of a book club by J.M. Twenge, iGen, Why Today's Super Connected Kids Are Growing Up Less Rebellious, More Tolerant, Less Happy, and Completely Unprepared for Adulthood, and what this means for the rest of us. So Dr. Pratt and Dr. Taylor, along with three other co-authors, Dr. Stephanie Attardi, Sarah Lurchenfelt, and Kara Sarinsky, came up with this workshop based on that book. So the group is extremely unique and a diverse set of individuals coming from different backgrounds, everything from research training to anatomy, microbiology, cell biology, pharmacology, and they came together out of this common interest for finding strategies to practically work with the new generation. So Dr. Pratt and Dr. Taylor, I am pleased to welcome you to our library conference and super excited that you are here to present to us today. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. All right, I will share my screen. And I'll put up our PowerPoint. Oops. And I will. Did that work?
Well, they can see all of our slides now.
Okay. We're seeing your notes.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
That's perfect.
Yay,
now they can see the whole team. Well, great. So to start us out thinking about the new generation, it's really important that we take a moment to self-reflect. So what we're going to do first is we're going to do sort of a sorting game. And the sorting game is going to allow us to do a self-assessment of our own ideas of what have basically shaped us. So we're going to put a Qualtrics survey link in the chat, and I don't want you to click on it yet, because what I want you to think about very quickly, almost a gut reaction, is to be like, oh yeah, that's totally me. And go ahead and check the yes column. And then there'll be a column where you can click on the little dot and be like, nah, that really doesn't describe me. Don't overthink it. Don't think about, well, this kind of describes me before my, years that I moved to Colorado, or this describes me after. Just what describes you. And the traits are alphabetical. And again, just a yes or no. When you are all done, if you click on your participant drop-down menu, you'll see that one of the interactive session choices is yes, a little green yes checkbox. And if you check that, that'll let us know that you are all done taking the Qualtrics survey, and then we can continue to discuss what is going to happen with your results. If you can leave that screen open, if you have two screens or a way to shrink that screen, that would be great. Or if you want to grab a piece of paper now and a pen, you'll want to scribble down the number associated with the symbol that pops up at the end of the Qualtrics survey. So it's sort of like a little Lucky Charms symbol at the end. You'll get a count for a plus, a diamond, a heart, and I gotta remember my square. So you'll get a chance to write those down, or again, leave that screen open, because we're gonna discuss with the PowerPoint sort of a way that self-reflection will work just based on those shapes. And Dr. Taylor, I've lost the slides. So I've got to figure out how to see your slides, because that's going to help me.
You don't see the slides?
Not anymore. So I got to figure out what happened.
Can anybody else see the slides?
Yes, we can see them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
You see
that's good.
the
It's
activity.
just me. Okay. That'll make things interesting.
How can you not see the slides? That's so weird.
It disappeared. All I have is all the awesome people attending. Okay.
I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, this will be view. I'd like to view. Well, go ahead and start the Qualtrics survey and enjoy.
And we'll give you about 10 minutes to do this.
Well, they don't need 10, they need about 2.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true. We'll give you about 2 minutes to do that. We should have brought Jeopardy music for this part.
Absolutely. I have gallery view and I have speaker view. That's it.
Are you on a Mac?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I couldn't see
not.
Stephanie's either, and I was scrambling the entire time to see it.
Oh.
I'm wondering if is it another window or
And I'm looking, and I'm desperately looking for the other window. And I go to my other window, and it's not there, and I go to another window, and it's not there.
how about if we have you, is there a way to leave the meeting and then come back in?
Sure. I mean,
Let's give that a try.
okay.
Maybe that'll bounce everything back up.
Okay. You're on your own, Dr. Taylor. I had a
Nice.
great time meeting everyone. It was a wonderful presentation. You guys keep working on that Qualtrics, and I'll be back.
All right, well, we have 50 participants right now, and 27 have given us a green check mark. So if you're done the survey, if you can type the green check mark in the participants box, that'll let us know when everyone's done the survey. We probably only need a couple more minutes.
Hello, Dr. Taylor.
Can you see the slides?
I can see the slides. Awesome.
Happy, so happy. All right, we have 36 of the 50 people have taken the survey.
Wonderful.
Oh, I guess plus.
And again, you'll want to make sure you write down your results or leave that screen open.
Maybe we'll just give it one more minute. Just to keep us on track.
And Dr. Taylor, I'm seeing 45 responses from the Qualtrics side of things.
Oh, perfect. Oh, that's probably everybody then, because I didn't do it. Dr. Pratt didn't do it. You probably didn't do it. All right, perfect.
Okay, so with our Lucky Charm symbols and the numbers, we'll want to take a look at them, and we're going to show you, circle, there we are, plus, circle, heart, and diamond, and talk to you about what that actually, I guess, provides us with. And what we want to keep in mind is that this really is a snapshot. This is a snapshot of who we are right now, gut reaction, not what we might be 5 years from now or what we might be when we try and meet the students online in the fall. But for right now, this is what our characteristics are. All right, Dr. Taylor, you can, there we go. So a lot of information here, but this will give you a chance to sort of take a look at your pluses. So the number of pluses, those are usually, for the most part, associated with the baby boomers. And most resources tell us that that would be a birth date between 1946 and 1960. And there are some events during your childhood that may have shaped how you answered these particular sort of words or phrases. There was a civil rights movement, Vietnam War, the race to the space. We remember that. It's commonly associated with some of these characteristics. We just picked 3. There are quite a few more. If you want to read, we have an opportunity to share all of our resources with you at the end, so you don't need to scribble down the books that we're using because you might want to follow up. Individualistic, strong, work ethic, and competitive. Moving to my generation here, Gen X, which is a birth date of 1961 to 1980, kind of in the blue circles. So if you're looking at your total number of blue circles that you had from the Qualtrics survey, some of the events or styles of living that were there: high divorce rates. We had the Watergate scandal, the AIDS epidemic, again, just to name a few. I'm sure that there were many more that shaped us. Commonly associated characteristics: cynical, independent, and family focused. And then if you look at your heart total, that belongs to commonly associated characteristics of the millennials, birth date 1981 to 1995. And we see those dealing with a high loan debt, declining job market, and what we often call the helicopter parents, that hover over the students to make sure that every bit of information that the students are receiving or their kids are receiving is they're also privy to. Commonly associated characteristics: digitally connected, optimistic, and focused on self. And finally, our purple diamonds, our purple diamonds. And that's where we are right now. This is the Gen Z or iGeneration. It's a little slow loading on mine, but this is roughly 1996 on, and they haven't really provided a cutoff. Are you seeing the full slide, Dr. Taylor?
Oh, yeah. Is it cut off for you?
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, it is.
Is it cut off for everybody?
Yes.
Here it is.
Oh, it's
It's
loading.
coming. The hamster wheel.
Yep.
The hamsters on the hamster wheel are like, woohoo.
Oh,
So our purple diamonds are going to be words or phrases that are commonly associated with this new generation. And you might already be on track. You might already have quite a few diamonds that you relate to. So what we're going to talk about more is this actual iGeneration. And we're going to learn when we reflect back on this self-assessment that we really are many generations. Our characteristics may not only be in the generation that we grew up in, because we are working with so many of the other generations. For example, working with baby boomers, teaching millennials, or teaching iGen. And to recognize the fact that many of the millennials that, if we've been in the arena for a while, are now our co-workers and our colleagues, and that this new generation right now is actually into their 3rd year of medical school. So we are no longer really working by reaching out to students that are millennials. We're definitely in knee deep, sometimes it feels like neck deep, with the iGeneration. So again, before I hand it over to my partner in crime, Dr. Taylor, we need to accept that these words really are a snapshot of the current you and not necessarily the future you or some of the modifications you can make. We have to admit that to ourselves that we actually might require a little bit more growth and patience as an educator to embrace this new generation, this iGen, because we guarantee that you'll need to adjust your frame of mind, if you haven't already, to comprehend this entirely new generation.
all right. So let's talk a little bit more about this generation. And as Dr. Pratt mentioned, you know, these are all generalizations. Anything in generational research, we're kind of in that fine line. We don't want to be stereotyping everyone, but it's kind of to just give us a feel for that generation as a whole. And it doesn't mean each individual person in that generation has all of the characteristics we're going to talk about. But today we just want to learn a little more about, in general, what types of things this generation thinks and believes in, and what shapes them. So the first important thing is this new generation has never seen a world without technology, which for many of us is crazy to think about. So on the top here is just a little infographic, and probably even if it's small, you can recognize a lot of these pictures up here. So these are things like social media, Google, Wikipedia, YouTube, so video learning, cell phones, smartphones, things like that. These have been around for this generation's entire life. So a lot of these things I still consider new. They've had since birth. So these are all just things that are in their life all the time. So that's something important to think about, how they think about these things. These aren't special things. These have just always been around. Dr. Pratt, for all of the generations, also mentioned shaping events. So for this group of individuals, the iGen or Gen Z, they've had very unique shaping events. So they had the first Black president with President Obama. Global terrorism has been present their whole life. They've watched their parents go through the Great Recession. And for a lot of them, that was a huge factor. They've watched their parents lose jobs, try to find jobs, struggle for money. And that had a huge impact on a lot of individuals in this generation. Mass shootings, unfortunately, have been around forever. They grew up in elementary school doing practices for what if an active shooter comes into my school, which is just inconceivable for a lot of us. We didn't do that when we were kids. And that's just been the same as a fire drill. LGBT rights have been on the front page kind of since they were born. That's been kind of going through the media, and that's been a part of their lives as well. Also, decline in the middle class. They've seen the growth of the upper class and the lower class, and what we're seeing, the decline of the middle class. So this is just kind of something they've seen all through growing up. So to kind of finish that slide that Dr. Pratt started, we can look kind of in general at the characteristics of the iGeneration or iGen. They tend to have a lot of integrity. They're very honest, they're very loyal, and that's important in school settings and work settings as well. They also tend to be very open. They're very tolerant of others. They want everyone to have equal rights. They think that everyone should have all the same access, regardless of how they were born, what they look like, anything like that. They tend to have tenacity, so they have a lot of determination. They're very eager. They want to get jobs done that they start. And they're also very caring. So they have a lot of compassion. They have a lot of kindness. And a lot of that, again, kind of comes out in wanting equality for everyone. What we'll talk about in more detail today, they're very distinct in how they spend their time. So we'll talk about how they fill their hours of their day compared to the other generations. And sneak peek, a lot of that has to do with technology. They're also distinct in how they behave. They're very cautious. They like safety. You know, they're not as willing to just run out and try new things as previous generations have been in general. Their attitudes towards religion, sexuality, and politics is very different from what we've seen in other generations, and we'll touch upon that as well. And they're also very different in how they socialize. And again, this a lot has to do with screens. So they interact a lot more through screens than in person with their friends and other individuals. And we've seen that this has resulted in diminished verbal and social skills, and also attention span deficits. And we'll talk about some of the data to go with that as well. So knowing all this, kind of our overall question that we wanted to know was, how do people in this generation learn? How do all these characteristics and shaping events affect their learning and how they learn new things? And how are they in terms of education? Mm-hmm. So kind of looking at who are this iGen? And again, as Stephanie said in the introduction, the 5 of us who put this workshop together are all medical educators. So we looked at our first year class to see, you know, when are these iGens coming? When are we going to start to see them? And we learned they're already here. So this slide is actually a year old. As Dr. Pratt mentioned, you know, more than half of our class are already iGen. So they're going to be doctors in 2 years. So they're not the little kids we're thinking of. They're already grown-ups. They're in higher education. Many of them, if they're going to college, have already been through college. So they're already here. Oh, I just got a ding. I don't know what that was. So just a little quote that we thought was poignant. Be patient, be excited, embrace them, and learn from them. At the same time, be prepared to teach them. Ignore stereotypes. Remember, there once was an older generation that viewed you with the same concerns. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the concerns that we have in this iGen and kind of ways we might need to reframe and think about how we educate this group of individuals. So we know from the data, and just to kind of orient you, on the right side of this slide are some of the data figures from Twangy's book. And she made a lot of her conclusions based on surveys that students took in middle school and in high school. And so her data is all based on how people were feeling at that time. Some generational research is more, today, think about how you were in high school. Think about how you were in elementary school. Her research we really liked and embraced because she collected the data at the time students were that age. So there's no bias there. They're really reporting what they're thinking at that time. So on the right here is a graph of students. So I have to move my chat box up. So this is students in grade 12, so 12th graders, and kind of whether or not they were going out without their parents. So did they leave the house without their parents? So some of us, I'm with Dr. Pratt, I'm also a Gen Xer. I was raring to go out without my parents. Why would you want to go to the mall with your parents? That just seems inconceivable to me. But if you look at this graph, and the red line here is kind of when iGen starts, these students are going out with their parents. This is, they don't want to go anywhere without their parents. They like having their parents with them. And this is just very different. As you can see, all the other generations were quite happy going out without their parents. They like to have their parents. So that kind of comes in with what Twangy talked about growing up slowly. They're remaining more childlike for a longer period of time. Here, they're also less likely to date. So I guess that you could say that goes hand in hand. If your parents are with you all the time, you're probably not going to be dating. I don't know. So again, you can see it's not as dramatic as the last one slide with iGen coming, but they are less likely to date. They like hanging out with their family at home. Surprisingly, they're also less likely to get a driver's license. So, and a lot of students, there's quotes in the book, their parents had to nag and drag them to the driver's license place to get their driver's license. I'm very different. I got my driver's license the day after my birthday. I already had a car. I was just dying to get out there and drive by myself and be by myself. But these kids are much, much less likely. They are quite happy relying on their parents and staying at home. So they don't necessarily need to go out and get their driver's license. And kind of hand in hand with this, they're less likely to work during school or during summer breaks. So they're more likely to just stay at home, rely on their parents giving them handouts. They don't see any need to make their own money, anything like that. Of that list, this is the one that has, in my opinion, the most impact on education. So if you don't know how to get ready for work, go to work, earn money, there's a lot of growing up in that kind of whole scenario. And again, here is a quote from that book. Oh, and my chat is in the way. There we go. So if I had worked in high school, regardless of where, I would have known how to behave on the job. In fact, if I had had a job, I probably would have learned discipline and work ethic that would have helped me in many areas of my life. I would have learned the importance of attendance, which is something I have a huge struggle with when it comes to school and appointments. I've never learned what it's like to earn something. So this is a quote in the book from Vicky, who is 22 years old, and she's part of this iGeneration. So if we think of things like school, this is huge. Like, I hate when I'm 2 minutes late for something. If you've never been to work, you don't know anything about thinking about things like that. You learn about budgeting time for travel, planning out your day. These are all things that these students have not done before. So adulting is now a verb. This is something, maybe I'm a little slow with life, but I learned this in the book. I didn't know adulting is a verb. So if iGen students especially have to go do something responsible, they call it adulting. We just call it normal, I guess. Today's teens have had less experience with adult experiences, adult responsibilities. So this is that growing up slowly. So 18-year-olds today look like what 14-year-olds used to look like. And a lot of this is from the parents. The parents are also more likely to treat their older students as children, even when they go to college. But the students don't seem to have a problem with that. They're quite comfortable with it. So it's important to think about, how does this affect the education? How is this going to affect these students in terms of their careers? So again, just a little more data to kind of round this out. We also know that screen time now is linked with mental health. So the lack of face-to-face interaction will lead to declines in mental health. And we know iGen students tend to spend less time interacting face-to-face and more time with screens. So screen activities are linked to less happiness. Non-screen activities are linked to happiness. And we see this with depressive symptoms. So we know females especially are more likely to show depressive symptoms in this generation. And they actually estimate 1 in 9 iGen teens are clinically depressed. And they think a lot of this is linked directly to this large amount of screen time. So we talked about these individuals spending more time on their screens. So there's some data out there that shows, this is again in 12th grade, so the end of high school, how they're spending their screen time. They're averaging 6 hours a day of leisure time on screens. So this isn't counting school or, you know, times work if they need to be on the screen. This is just leisure time. And you can see all different types of screens. Texting, internet, TV are our biggest kind of time sucks on the screen. We're also seeing a decrease in reading for pleasure. So the students don't tend to spend time on books, magazine, and newspapers. Instead, they're reading just those little tiny snippets of news. So they're just reading headlines and then moving on, read another headline, move along. So this reading for pleasure is just not happening anymore. And we've started to see this in SAT scores. So we've seen a decrease in writing scores and critical reading scores that we think is linked directly to this not reading, just not having the ability to read for a long time for pleasure. So there was a study where they they inserted a program into laptops of students and took screenshots every 5 seconds. They saw that on average, students in this generation were switching between tasks every 19 seconds. So they're not concentrating on one single thing for more than 19 seconds at a time. 3/4 of the students' windows were open for less than a minute. So again, they're just reading these small bits of information and then moving to something else. This is very different from sitting down, what I think of relaxing, sitting with a book for a full hour. That's just not something that these students are doing. So again, it's important to think about what is the effects of these on education. Excuse me. And then another point is they use YouTube a lot. So again, small snippets though. They're not watching an hour-long show on YouTube. They're watching little snippets. In education, if they're bored with their professor, they don't think they're that exciting and interactive, they'll just look up that topic on YouTube and watch a video on YouTube. They'll get the same information. They'll find it more entertaining. And in some ways, you can't blame them for that. If their choice is to sit in a classroom or on Zoom for an hour and a half watching the same student or the same teacher talk in a monotone voice versus getting a cool video that has animations and things like that, you kind of don't blame them. Maybe that's a better way to go. And education is kind of moving in that direction now. Educators are trying to spend more time thinking about the student experience and learning things, and that students don't just sit passively, they're actually should be actively learning in these situations. And then thinking about working, when you ask iGen students to think about the jobs they're going to have in the future and things like that, again, they don't have that work experience, so they don't really know about attendance, working in teams, and collaborations. These were big buzzwords for the millennials, especially, that they loved to work in teams and collaborate on things. These students don't tend to come from that background as much. They have seen their parents again through the recession, so they want a job that is practical. They want job security. They want to make money in a job that they don't hate, basically. So these are all extrinsic factors. They're very motivated by having a job, having job security, not doing the job they love. So this is very different from what we've seen with just the very generation right before with millennials. We also talked at the beginning about how they like to be very inclusive. So again, they grew up in a world where transgender was a word everybody knew. When I was growing up, I didn't even know what that meant. They think of gender as very fluid. Marriage equality has been at a national level since they've been born. They've just seen all these things in the news. So this has kind of just been around for them their whole life. They also grew up in college with safe spaces and trigger warnings. And just to keep everyone on the same page, so a safe space, if you are not familiar with it, is a place intended to be free of bias, conflict, criticism, or potentially threatening actions, ideas, or conversations. So that's a safe space. A trigger warning is a statement that's cautioning that content might be disturbing or upsetting. So in school, a lot of teachers will put a trigger warning, so they'll put something at the top of a slide if it might be disturbing or upsetting, just to warn the students that they might be feeling uncomfortable. So growing up with this, it makes sense. This generation is easily offended because they're used to having these warnings, they're used to having these safe spaces to go to. And this makes for a very different educational experience. It used to be universities were places to go and explore and learn new things and meet new people and, you know, just experience all these different things. With the presence of these safe spaces and trigger warnings, that's made for a very different educational experience. And just to take a small aside for 1 minute, in medical education, this is a big issue. Like, these students are going to grow up to be doctors. They're going to need to tell someone that their loved one has passed away. There's no one that doesn't find that to be a disturbing or upsetting moment. And we have to teach them how to be okay with these moments, how to really be in this chaos and still feel okay.
Yep.
So to summarize, I whipped through that a little bit quickly, but this generation, again, in general, they are growing up slowly. 18-year-olds are what 14-year-olds used to look like. They experience social interactions very differently. They tend to do it through screens. They're dependent on technology. They use technology all the time, and this has had a lot of downstream effects that we mentioned. They're concerned about financial security, and that's because they watch their parents go through the recession. They embrace equality, and that's a great thing. And they also have an expectation for safety, and that goes for in school, work, kind of any environment that they're in. So that's kind of the overall summary. Again, with that caveat, this is general. This isn't going to be each individual person. We don't want to be stereotyping all of our individuals. So that is iGen in a 20-minute nutshell. Hopefully that was helpful.
That was great. So again, I will have a chance to share what's running through our minds right now, because I know I need like a paper bag to breathe into after hearing, the fact that, yep, I agree. Yes, I've seen that. I've experienced that. We will definitely have a chance to share. So if you are running scenarios in your head or have questions or, oh my goodness, I've totally bumped into this, scratch it down on a piece of paper, because we have that time to share coming up. But let's, again, take another opportunity to get a check and balance as to where we are. So there'll be another Qualtrics survey. And this one, again, I don't want to have you spend tons of time belaboring each question. But this activity reflects on your personal identification with, again, key characteristics and events that have been used to define the 4 generations. And you're going to get a yes or no. And again, these are more questions or statements. And it's an important to answer more of a reflex, again, gut reaction, than to have a reflection and a pondering of your childhood. Let's see, the score will be done based on yes or no's, and the total will be out of 12. So you will want to keep a total of how many yes, or actually just what your total is. And I'll explain what that actually means when we come back after viewing. So again, a green checkbox is great. Once you've finished your 12-question Qualtrics survey, just keep your number in mind, or again, scratch it down on a piece of paper, and we'll learn what that number means. Okay, have fun.
Wow, and somebody is already finished. That's impressive.
That's what I call doing it as a reflex and not as a reflection. That's fantastic. I am never changing my screen, Dr. Taylor, so you're the one that's keeping an eye on it, because as soon as I go to look at the chat box, I lose everything.
Okay, don't do it then.
Nope, I am not. I am staying where I am. We have not, I know I haven't seen any literature really discussing that, which is interesting, because the fact that, yeah, if you want to know that the world is in turmoil, you can get all that news feed on your phone instantly. You can know about every single school shooting. You can know, I think that was something to think about that we can use in the discussion too, is the fact that news for us, you read in a newspaper. You didn't know that there was a school shooting in Colorado unless you watched the news with your parents or somebody reported it on the 13th page of the newspaper. And here it pops up as you're in, you know, on your phone with all sorts of news feeds. So, you know, the events themselves are definitely disturbing and can lead to depression, but the speed and the frequency at which students are getting that information on their screen, I think, is really what makes it a more slap in your face and more poignant.
Yep. All right, we have 36
All right.
yeses.
I see 46 from the Qualtrics side of things.
Perfect.
Okay. That's probably everyone, because again, I didn't do the survey. Probably Dr. Pratt and Stephanie didn't as well, so that should be good.
Okay. So what we want to think about with our number here is that, again, these exact same questions or statements were given to all of the generations. So these are ones that would have affected or not been affected depending on your background. So these influences are your current student population, if you will. And I'm just curious if anyone would like to use the chat box to pop in their number. So again, the total is out of 12. And, oh, Anna, 6, 5. Okay, these are all, okay, good. Thank goodness someone else got a 3, because that was, Lori got a 3. Okay.
I had 4 when I did it.
Yeah, you got a 4. Tracy got a 4. So the closer you are to a number 12, the more you are aligned with your current student population and those that are going to be coming to you with questions in your current role in libraries. I will say that my score was a 3. Dr. Taylor announced that her score was a 4. I don't know, I believe Stephanie took it and I'm not quite sure what her score was, but the closer you are to 12, it means that you perhaps have a tighter understanding of this new generation than those with a smaller score. And now that doesn't mean you can't travel the distance. It just means that we may find ourselves with the face of more so than someone that is completely jiving with our current generation. So the lower scores may feel like they have, again, more distance to travel to embrace this iGen culture versus a number that's already close to 12 that share a lot in the philosophy. And again, this isn't to label you. There's no scarlet letters to wear on the chest for this one, but it's a nice reflective tool to recognize the fact that for many of us, this is a 180 from perhaps even what we were first teaching and working with and helping find, working with their research projects with the millennials, which I also found myself going. And now the millennials, wow, I feel like they're normal. Maybe there's a good sign for me that got 3 when I took this 12-question survey. Now maybe in 5 years I should retake it and see if I've balanced myself more with my students so that I understand where they're coming from, so that I can be more neutral and be more receptive to helping them navigate the current world, which of course isn't easy. As we know, there's a lot pulling us all in many directions. So I am going to see if I can see the next slide. Yay. So now we're going to move on to something else. It's kind of nice to break up PowerPoints with discussions and chatting on the chat line. So now we're moving to kind of a different type of realization or reflection, if you will, as to where we are. And that's with our scenarios. We wrote classroom scenarios, but the way we wrote these is this could be a student approaching you with an email. This could be a student approaching you in the library, online. Maybe you're working with a faculty member to work with a class that's just started a literature review, and you need to be part of the teaching team and getting these students ready. And so we're going to jump into Zoom breakout rooms. You will have a facilitator there. The facilitator is not to lead the discussion. The facilitator is basically there to help make sure that this doesn't turn into a rant and that we work on the scenarios. You should have seen what happened when we put tons of other faculty in rooms. It got to be like, oh my goodness, get me a glass of wine. I'm ready to talk about this generation. But we have for each of these 3 scenarios, which are going to be given to you, again, there'll be a link. What aspects of the iGen culture do you think have shaped? So maybe there were other events that we didn't touch on during our PowerPoint that you definitely feel are leading to what that scenario was based on. What can we do as academics to help meet this generation halfway? And then what can we do to help adjust the students' perceptions? So maybe we can say, I understand where you're coming from. We're gonna meet 50-50. We're gonna help you understand that this is a deadline for your project, and these are some ways you can meet that deadline. So again, we are not here to just throw up our hands and offer that as the only way to think, but us as strong generational people have a lot to bring to the table. Our work ethic, our demand for perfection, our loyalty to our jobs and to what we really love and what we wear our heart on our sleeve, all those kind of characteristics that our generations bring, this generation can definitely learn from. So I am going to allow you guys to have some time to reflect on all 3 questions, a good open discussion, and then what we'll do is we'll come back in a big, huge group, and then groups that worked on classroom scenario 1 will get a chance to talk about the answers that they came up with, and then all of the different breakout groups that got 2, because there'll be multiple groups that had this classroom scenario, and then another big bolus of Zoom groups will get a chance to talk about scenario number 3. And then we'll have a moment to, after that discussion, to really open it up and see how we're dealing with this new generation at our institutions.
And let's say we'll come back at 11:15, and that should give you enough time if you need to run and take a little personal break or anything like that. You should still have time to talk about the cases as well.
Absolutely.
So Heather, should I stop
You ready?
sharing?
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll open up the rooms
let's
now.
go for it.
All right.
Do it.
We'll see you back.
Okay.
Is this classroom 2A?
Nope, let me assign you over there too.
Oh, okay.
I just did the online, your online presence. Let me get you over there to your 2A.
Yep.
Okay.
And are they unmuted?
They should be
The
able
other
to
people?
unmute.
Okay.
There you go.
That was way too cool. I'm sorry. That was fantastic. Okay, so I think, Dr. Taylor, that you have each of the scenarios on your presentation.
Yes. There we go. There we go.
All right, and I think you're grabbing number 1.
I'm doing number 1. Okay. All right, so now we have our audience participation component of the session. So we are, just so kind of everyone knows what's going to be coming up, we're going to talk about each case for up to 10 minutes. And if you were in a group that talked about each case, we want to hear everything you talked about. Well, not everything, but we want to hear everything important that you talked about. If you did not study this case and didn't discuss it, maybe wait till at least halfway through. We kind of gave you a little summary of what the case was on the slide. So again, we're going to spend about 10 minutes on each case. Then we have about 10 minutes planned for just kind of open discussion if anyone wants to make any comments about anything. And then just the last 2 or 3 minutes, we'll give you a handout that Dr. Pratt mentions that has kind of some tips on it, as well as all the references that we've talked about. So that's kind of what's coming up for the last half of the presentation. So that being said, I will lead the first case. So any of the groups that looked at this case in more detail, I'll be looking to you to give some comments. But just kind of the Coles notes of the case. Students are required to complete a longitudinal project in a course. To help students manage their time, you've designed project milestones and give frequent reminders before each milestone's deadline, so kind of chunking it into smaller chunks. However, as each milestone deadline approaches, you get frantic emails from students requesting extensions every single time, even though you've tried so hard to set this up to make it much easier for them. So any of the groups or rooms that talked about case 1, our 3 questions are the same for all of the cases. So what sorts of things did you come up with for what aspects of iGen culture do you think have shaped the students' perceptions about this issue? And you can just unmute yourself and chat, or if you are more comfortable, if you want to type things in the chat box, that's fine as well.
Well, there's that general lack of experience with responsibility. You know, that the youngsters haven't been out in the workforce. They haven't had that, you know, accountability drummed into them, where deadlines are real, where there are consequences for work missed or work done badly. And we also touched on the helicopter parents, you know, often swooping in to kind of be a buffer or take the blows, just smooth the path when they might do better to let kids stumble and fail and learn from that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely agree. I'm writing notes because you guys are coming up with good things, so I'm keeping notes over here.
That's great. Did any of the other groups come up with anything to add?
I would have to say that a lot of these points that I'm looking at here are pretty much what happened to me when I taught a Lib 197 8-week course at Central Michigan this last fall term, where we did have a project that they had to finish by the end of the 8 weeks. It was presented in the first week, and I gave them, you know, deadlines for each portion, repeated, sent emails, reminded, did announcements, and still at the end got some projects that were late. So this sounds really familiar to me. And looking at some of those characteristics that you pointed out about the generations, I can see why, again, reiterating that, you know, never had the work experience where they had to get deadlines, you know, wanting that security and safety of someone else taking care of it for them. So I don't know that I have anything to add that's helpful, but all I can say is this looks really familiar to me from my first experience teaching that 8-week course.
couldn't it also be because they're juggling so many more issues and so many more responsibilities too? I know, you know, the students that I work with have so many more things on their plates that they're dealing with than I went through as a student, but I think it could also be they just have so much going on that they can't keep up with the deadline. And so one of the things I think we could do to help them is give them more strategies. We talked a little bit in our group about giving them more strategies to help them meet deadlines, like setting phone reminders. Somebody from the group brought up, you know, so that they know how to use technology to benefit them and to try to keep all those things straight.
Yeah, that's great. I'm moving on to question 2. How can we help meet this generation halfway? That's fantastic. I think from running this workshop a few times, a lot of individuals have said from working with this generation, even though they've grown up with technology, they really don't know all these great things that their technology can do. They just know how to read those quick things. They don't know about the reminders and, you know, things that'll help them keep a schedule if they haven't learned how to do that in the past. That's great.
Yeah, everyone assumes that because they were born with the phone in their hand, that they're using it for calendar reminders or to use an app that chimes when they should be doing this. And I think another interesting thing that was brought up just now is that maybe they see these deadlines, but they don't have a strategy even for the way to find the literature. Like, say the first deadline is please turn in your list of citations by, you know, January, whatever. The word citation just, you know, they freeze and then they just lock down because they don't want to be wrong. They don't want to, they're fearful of doing something wrong.
Any of the other groups have something to add about meeting them halfway?
I think that there could be a way that we can help them accept their, support them when they have failures. I mean, even simple things like a failed, you know, subject search in a database, because they're used to having the support of their parents and their peers. So, you know, I think as academics, we're just used to like, oh, well, that didn't work, we'll just try again. But this generation often just gives up. You know, they just say, oh, well, I'll just find it on YouTube or someplace else. So I think that we can find a scaffolding method that, you know, if not this search, then we'll try another. And we just have to find an engaging way to do it. You know, I'm not exactly sure, you know, if we found that trick yet in our toolbox, but, you know, I try to meet them, and sometimes I have maybe a student helper with me when when I'm giving a one-on-one session. So they kind of talk about it amongst themselves, you know, and then I'm almost like the guy on the side. And that seems to help them because it's like they speak their own language and then I just steer the direction. And that is sometimes very helpful because I know I take away something from the conversation and it helps me moving forward when I have a one-on-one, you know. So, you know, I have that bridge of a cohort, you know, so that's always helpful. So
I like that. Find a bridge.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that I call them my information Sherpas, my little library helpers.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
All right, so before we move on to the last case, any last thoughts? I guess question 3 we've kind of already covered as well, but what can we do to help adjust the students' perceptions and attitudes?
We really try to make real world consequences clear, just to be very explicit. You know, that I try to translate things into, you know, employment type scenarios of if a boss gave you a job to do, you would have to deliver. You don't just get to blow it off. You don't get to be late. But I guess I do that more as a mom than as a teacher, perhaps, in my role at in the hospital library, I'm maybe a little bit more supportive.
Yeah, no, that's great.
When I was teaching the Lib 197 class, I found myself giving way a lot on the deadlines and saying, well, you can turn it in late, but you will lose a point. So that they realize that if they do turn it in late, there is a consequence that they're going to lose points on it in the end. Because I found myself, you know, I'm not the toughest teacher, I don't think. So I found myself backing off on some of my deadlines, especially for students who had like good excuses. So I would try to accommodate them to a certain extent, but let them know that there was going to be a penalty of some sort if they were late. So it encouraged some people to be on time, but it probably encouraged some people to hand things in late.
Mhm.
But I was afraid that I was going to get to the end of the class and no one would have handed anything in. So, you know, as it is, they all did fairly well, but it was a little frightening there halfway through the class to see which assignments got completed in a timely manner and which ones didn't.
Mhm.
When I saw this question, this is Alexandra Sarkozy, I find it more valuable to turn it back on myself and think, what can I do to help adjust my own perceptions and attitudes to where these students are coming from? Because I hear this entire scenario and a lot of the talk being very boomer-centric values about consequences and taking points off. We need to meet the students where they are, and what about my attitudes and perceptions that I just accept as normal but are actually generational. I'm Gen X, by the way. How can I adjust my own attitude to not be a fuddy-duddy, basically, and to support them in their own growth and to keep up with the world myself?
Yeah, that's great. You are the minority of individuals that have been in a lot of our workshops that we've given.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's in the world that, you know, we're working with undergrads and graduate students and professional students. I flip between, if not me, who is going to help them recognize that there are consequences for every decision. And some are easy, you know, I'm going to wear a blue shirt today and life is going to go on. And others are going to be like, I'm going to skip breakfast and then sit through this entire talk starving, which I am. So, you know, so I mean, there's always going to be something, but I like the fact that you are taking this and you're finding the reflective piece of it, which is why we did so many breakout sessions of reflection, is to really understand, wow, I am coming to this situation with a different set of glasses on than others are. And maybe we need to take those Gen X glasses off and look at iGen differently. We want to tackle number 2?
Yes. There we go.
So this was case 2, encouraging engagement. We didn't put up the entire case, but we've paraphrased it for you. So this would be those with case 2. It says, you put forth a great effort to design a special synchronous Zoom session, which includes a special guest teacher. Few students attended. You were disappointed and embarrassed, but most of the class did watch a recording of the session and thought it was actually really good and thanked you for it later on in the evaluations. So what aspects of iGen culture do you think shaped why the students responded to this synchronous Zoom meeting the way they did?
This is Diane. Our group tended to think that maybe with the recording, or this generation has grown up with everything is recorded, we can look at it later. So there wasn't that urgency to watch it right at the time that it was going on.
Our group also discussed how they are used to watching things at like 1.5 times and 2 times the speed. So if they watch the recording, they can get it done much quicker than they would in real time, where they would have to sit there and wait for the people to actually talk the whole time.
Millennial Marlene here. We like doing everything at like 1 a.m. So I think that the timetable as well, if it was earlier in the day or maybe they had something else going on with their schedule, but also knowing that it's recorded, you can watch it at 1 in the morning or whenever you work best. So I think it was just a little bit too flexible and also not being mandatory and just being, open participation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is where I find that even when I was teaching in person, face to face, I could look out at the group and saw some of them were actually following along with what was being presented, and some of them just watched because they rather go away and then do the exercises on their own or away from being in the class. So I think that's not just, it's just the way some people learn and how some people react to teaching. And I think we have to consider that with any generation that we teach to.
That was something I was reflecting on in our group, was the fact that I teach a variety of generations, as I'm sure a lot of you do, and I don't know that this strikes me as being that much different than some of my adult students who have different things going on in their lives, whether it's caring for parents or jobs or those sorts of things. So I guess I would be curious to see on the analytics side, like where they dropped off in the recording, because that might indicate perhaps the recording was too long and non-interactive. And if that was the case, then that might indicate, their desire to have things quick, have things, you had mentioned earlier about them switching screens so quickly, and so their attention is diverted for whatever reason very quickly between things. So that could be something that was interfering or causing them to do that. That could be part of the reason. And someone in my group had mentioned some interactive open access tools that might, I realize this isn't a question too, but that might help get them more involved in staying in the recording or even participating in the live if they had something that was bouncing them back and forth between somebody just talking and then them participating in something. Because when you're doing a live session, it's kind of hard to do things in micro lesson chunks. So if you have the ability to interact with a tool such as the way you guys are doing things here, maybe that would encourage them to be live and be more engaged.
Interesting. So actually, stopping in a stopping point and getting them engaged in a question breakout or a near peer discussion or something like that.
I would agree.
So I know that there are questions here, meeting them halfway and what we can do to help adjust the students' perceptions and attitudes. Any one of those three questions, feel free to offer your group's summary.
This is Diane. For our group, what we discussed was learning or finding out what technology they were using. Discussion was brought up that some people use phones, computers, tablets. So if there was any restrictions maybe on what they were using as how fast they could download it or what they could download. And then also understanding that there's a lot going on in the world. And so maybe the fact that they weren't able to go in right at the time that we had it, but they were able to watch it later. Just understanding what their schedule and what their technology difficulties might be.
Excellent.
This is Marlene again. In our group, we discussed about how for this generation, this may be on a basic level their first experience with the library. So really honing in on why it is that we're here and what it is that we can do for them. And so many times they don't even actually know what it is that they're looking for. So being as open and available as possible. Again, this might be their first experience with the library. They may not understand exactly our role in their whole, education journey. So being open, friendly, informative, all of those things that we kind of take for granted, but kind of reassessing the fact that they may not, just have any experience with us whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up again, Marlene, because that was an excellent comment that you made in our group.
Yeah, I think that honestly saying that, that's because I didn't hear that before. That's key for everybody. Like, we all remember going to the library as a little kid, and then when you're a grown up, like, what is the library for you? What does it do? Like, when I tell our med students that Stephanie helps me on a weekly basis with research, they're like, wow, you don't do that all on your own? It's like, no, we can't live without the library folks. Like, we need them. And it's, I don't know, it's shocking to a lot of them. So that's a great comment.
Yeah, knowing what we do. And also, I made a comment earlier where it's like so many schools, K through 12, don't have the library programs like what we grew up with. So this might literally be their first experience. So trying to kind of get a feel overall for how experienced they are, or, you know, how it is that we can make ourselves available for them.
All right, let's move on to the next case so that we have time for the big discussion at the end. So case 3, we had students are in the library conducting Google searches to find answers to finish up their take-home exam. The students are not responsive when the librarian comes by and tries to help them. They try to probe, engage their understanding, help them do the search. And despite the efforts that the librarian makes to make it a comfortable learning environment, they find that the students are hesitant to engage in any conversation. So anyone that talked about case 3 want to answer some of our questions?
This is Rebecca. One of the things our group talked about was, I think somebody had mentioned it earlier, sort of the culture of hand-holding and helicopter parents, leading to sort of a fear to take a risk and fail. And so, you know, the students may not want to admit that their go-to resource has failed them. And then, you know, talking about meeting them halfway is, you know, Google is a great resource to use. So let's see why the search didn't work, and maybe let's try something in this other resource that might get you some better information. I don't know if other people want to jump in.
Well, I know that initially we as librarians were poo-pooing Google searches. First place, I would definitely point them to Google Scholar as opposed to just Google. And I found that I had to use Google Scholar myself for a search request that I got from a faculty that just wasn't working in anything else. It was working, it was more productive in Google Scholar. And so I think we have to understand that if they're doing Google, I think the best thing is to say Google Scholar is your best option. And also, if you set it up so that it can be downloaded into bibliographic management, I think that's helpful to show them that. I find a lot of people don't understand that they can set that up, and they can be more productive in their searches using that. But sometimes that's the best option. It was for this faculty who had a very complex search and it just wasn't working, and I got better results using Google Scholar.
Anyone else want to add anything?
I think that's a good point, Merle, is, you know, we were kind of disparaging of Google back in the day, and now it's important to acknowledge that it is a tool, and it's a useful tool, and it's quite powerful. And instead of saying, oh, don't use that, why not show them some of the slick moves, you know, and the special searching parameters where you can really hone in on what it is that you're looking for.
Right, especially if you show them how they can set it up as advanced. People just don't realize that they can do advanced, and they can do, you can almost search it the way you would search any other database by putting quotes around phrases. And I think that it is helpful. We should show them how to use it properly and not say, oh, it's not, don't use that. You're not going to find anything, especially for some international things. I found that I found only one citation that someone was looking for and the only place I could find it was in Google Scholar. We searched every other database and it wasn't there.
Right, and when you've won their, you know, their respect, or you've made some kind of a connection because you're helping them and not telling them, oh, don't use that, then you can also say, and by the way, we also have this database or this specialty resource where you might even get a tighter and more relevant results. So if we fail here, then, you know, we don't have to give up. We always have other options.
I also think we need to keep in mind too, though, that not to overwhelm them with too much. If they're looking for something very specific for a specific task, you know, completing a take-home exam, that's not necessarily the time to do a really in-depth bibliographic instruction. It's to help them find that specific piece of information. And if we can be really helpful in that instance, then, oh, and by the way, we can really help when you're doing a paper, and I can give you even more information at that point. But to really respect that very often they're time pressed. They do like information in small chunks, and I think sometimes we just want to throw everything we know at them because we've got them right this minute. But we need to really, I think, start chunking out our instruction a bit better. I find myself doing that where I just want to tell them everything I know instead, and maybe it's just me, but instead of focusing in on what they need to know at this moment.
And kind of to add on to your comment, Nancy, in the chat we have from Sarah, we need to avoid information overload. If they are trying to complete an exam, they do not want a lecture and demo on searching. So help them where they are. And that's it. In my room, that's what we kind of talked about. In this scenario, they were trying to finish a take-home exam. So maybe give them your information so that you know, you can talk to them later, try to demonstrate to them a quick way to do this that will hopefully help them in their future. So yeah, that's great.
Well, I think sometimes we think it's our one chance with them. So we want to help. We want them to use the best information they can. But I think maybe if we, again, speaking for myself, if I can control myself a little bit better and just chunk out my information a bit better, I might get more multiple chances at them.
I couldn't agree more. You just defined me. You know, you make that connection and you're like, I made a connection with these guys. This is awesome. And I am going to just love them and hug them and give them all this amazing information. And it's like, oh, Dr. Pratt, I'm drowning. And then they don't want to talk to me anymore.
I think that's so rewarding when they come back to you because all of a sudden there's this light. Oh, this librarian helped me, and now I have a different problem, and that could be the person I'm going to turn to. And I find that with faculty, that was our like 10-minute or 10-second library speech of we don't need the library anymore. And you get that from a lot of faculty themselves who, because we give them full text, they don't think they need us for anything else because they can find everything they need there. So I think that as long as we have them come back, we know we've made an impression.
That's fantastic. That I'm writing all this down, so that's great.
All right, I am going to say we are moving into our next kind of more general discussion. So just what are your general iGen challenges and success stories? I think we've heard a couple already.
I have a quick one. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But, you know, we're going back to some of the aspects of this generation. One of them is that they're easily offended, right? And some people are like, oh, they're offended by everything. But I was helping someone with a reference question this week, and the student was looking for an article. It actually turned out to be a conference paper, but she said it's really old, and it was 1988. So for them, the 80s are ancient, and if like me, you are older than that particular paper, you might be inclined to take offense at that. But you know, so learning to sort of laugh those things off is really helpful.
I love that.
The other thing that I found very interesting, I think it was a postdoc in the lab, and she could not find for love or money. She needed the full text of the article. And what they don't understand is we provide interlibrary loan. So I took the opportunity of putting the request in rather than trying to use it as a teaching moment since we're all working virtually. And when I responded, I said, attached is your article. I used it through interlibrary loan and gave a link to how she could use that in the future. I just realized that sometimes they just don't have the time, especially since we're all working remotely and they can't be in their lab. So that's the way of doing a teaching moment, when you fulfill the request rather than saying, here, do the interlibrary loan, get it yourself. Then I think she would be more comfortable coming back to me and saying, I remember you told me interlibrary loan, could you show me that again or point me to that?
So I wanted to bring up one of the challenges that I think we've been experiencing in our medical library at OUWB, and that is really getting students the information they need to actually realize, oh, we have these services, we have these resources, and especially now in the virtual learning environment, the virtual work environment, it's been difficult to reach that typical student population unless they already know to come to you. And one of the things we've been talking about is doing a comprehensive communications and marketing plan. And I think beyond just teaching in the classroom, it also points to maybe we need to explore things that we've just said before. Nope, we're not going to look at social media. We're not going to look at using these different methods of communication. Very much our marketing has been text-based through newsletters, through emails, but only 20% of people actually open those, and we can see those from our statistics. And so looking at where students are and what platforms they're using, I think would help us get that initial foot in the door even before we can start the conversations about what are the good resources and what should we do in terms of teaching them. So that's been running through my mind as we're going through this workshop is, okay, I may need to revisit how we're actually doing our marketing.
Absolutely. How are, again, that meeting halfway. If we're thinking, wow, I'm so disappointed that the students are reaching out and yeah, we're sending it in a newsletter via email. I mean, email to them is like chiseling on a rock. I mean, they equate the two as being this old way of communication. It's very interesting to me, but you're absolutely right, Stephanie. I love that idea. Just how can we market to get them excited or to allow them to even figure out what we offer? So yeah.
This is Diana. I've had a lot of success actually leveraging the desire to have all interaction be mediated through a screen. And even when I was teaching in person back in the before the last couple of months, I would often have students complete activities in a Google Doc. And often even if they were working in small groups, they would enter their information, their results in a Google Doc. That Google Doc would then be accessible to everybody in the class, and I will keep it live for years if need be, so they can refer back to it. But by somehow entering their responses of what results did you get from this search? Why did you choose those search terms? Which databases did you choose? Under what circumstances might you choose to use this database in the future? By entering those responses in a shared Google Doc, the level of engagement went through the roof compared with if I were asking them to speak their responses out loud. And even when I asked them to report out loud to the whole class, because they had already written it down in the Google Doc, they were much more enthusiastic about sharing their opinions or results because they had already engaged in this more virtual environment.
I love it.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
And you've erased that fear of failure, you know, of being wrong, because they see their group's answers, then they can participate with the fact that they know that this is solid.
And they're also seeing in real time, not just their own group responses, but every other group's responses in real time.
That's awesome. What a great tool. I'm like, I just learned about Google Docs 2 years ago. Maybe I just need to retire. I don't know.
Oh. All right, let's move on. Actually, before we do that one, Stephanie, do you mind putting the link to the tips and tricks document in the chat for everyone? Ah, there we go. So we just have a 2-page, thank you, a 2-page little tips and tricks document that also contains references that we've used today. So that's for everyone to download and keep for yourself. And while you're doing that, maybe we'll just talk about 2 last questions for 3 or 4 minutes. We just wanted to know what struck you the most from this session. Is there anything that you kind of learned and thought, oh, that's why I'm dealing with that right now? And then the second question was, what from this presentation do you want to share with your colleagues? So kind of, we just want to know what were your aha moments, if any, and what you kind of took out from the presentation. Hopefully there's something.
Well, I'll start because I definitely took away something from our conversations when we were doing the case studies, is that when something in your definition was a failure, if you can relook at that situation and define it as, look at all the people that participated online and they said that the situation was, or the presentation was really good and helpful, that is a bonus, even though they may not have done it the way you wanted. We were in case 2, that it was like, you're still successful. Don't fuster around on the way that a Gen X would have done it, which is, of course, I'm going to show up at this time, even if it's not mandatory, because that's just what I do. And I'm very organized and, you know, nope, they did it their way and they still got something out of it, and be pleased with it. And it was just redefining a situation and staying more neutral than I have in the past. And I really needed to hear that from the attendees today. And I wrote it down, and there's like 3 stars around it. So I want to thank my group for, you know, kind of realigning me to where I should be.
Absolutely agree. If you give the students a problem and you give them the database to search, and if they find the answer, even though maybe you've given them instructions on how you think they should search it, but they've searched it and found the answer, I think that's great, because we all do things differently. And as long as they got the correct answer, I think that's what's more important, because out in the real world, they may not have a librarian there to say, this is how you search it, and they're going to stumble through. I had a request from someone to search for, because they didn't have access to that database. I'd never searched it before. And I figured out how to search it and got them the results that they were very happy with. So as long as you get the results, even though we think they should search it one way, and yet they've searched it in a way where they got what they were looking for. That's, to me, the most important thing.
Yep.
And again, I think the information about the short attention span and the switching between the screens, that really blew my mind. I mean, I have a short attention span as well, but actually seeing that and seeing how fast they're going through that information, I think we can really take that and kind of apply it to how it is that we are going to share our information in the future. So maybe we need to make things, more, I don't know what the change is going to be, but taking that information, I was really shocked by that. I thought that was really interesting.
This is Diane. I was really surprised at the amount of depression that they were showing, how it was increasing with the screen usage. And I think in the future, I know right now I'm very positive with our residents because I work at a hospital, and I'm very positive with the residents when they do find something or when they ask me for something and I give it right back to them. So I think I'm going to definitely try and really encourage that, yes, you did it, or yes, this is how you can get it. So just that positivity towards it to help them in the future.
Great tip. I'll just share, as Dr. Pratt did from her group. In my small group, we talked, well, I listened, they talked. My group talked about framing things when you're teaching how to do searching and things like that, not in terms of this will help you in your life, but in terms of this will save you time, and really stressing, even though you're teaching skills, that, you know, this will save you time. Because I think, you know, they all talked about how the students all have so much going on. The world is just so fast right now. Anything that will save them time, if you really frame it that way, might be better perceived by the students. So that was kind of my big takeaway. Does anyone want to give one last thought? All right, well, we want to be mindful of your time because we're all busy. So we'll just take this last moment to thank you so much for attending our virtual session. We're glad that at least some of you took some good take-home points home that you shared or put in the group chat. We want to just remind you that there are 3 others that are part of our group, so we just have them all on this slide that developed this workshop. And I think Dr. Pratt and I both love librarians, so we're just excited to hang out with librarians. Did you want to add anything, Dr. Pratt?
No, this was great. I got a lot out of this. That's what's wonderful about doing these sessions. When amazing minds come together, good things happen. And I had a wonderful time presenting it, because I'm always astonished with all the work that we did, what the literature said, and then getting to reframe it in a silver lining is always important. So I had a lot of fun today.
On behalf of our planning committee and all of our attendees, I just want to thank you so much to the both of you for taking your time today. I know with orientation for our medical students next week, this was a very busy week coming up for that. So we are very appreciative and grateful that you two were able to participate as part of our conference. And it was such a wonderful session. So everyone, please stick around for a couple of minutes. I have the MLA CE credit